Hello, friends. What is happening? This is Tom Froming. The channel is TF Twins. We are going to hang out a little bit tonight. Twins are off. We're going to talk about baseball. We're going to talk about injury updates. It's kind of the first thing I have to run through here. But you may notice, you may not, depending on how much of the channel you've watched and how many of these live streams in the past you've attended. Things look a little bit different, around here. Nothing too crazy, but I've had to switch up some things, and the way things are set up are a little bit different. So I thought tonight was, with the Twins being off, and this is just a good chance to test all this stuff out, make sure everything's working as I've been expecting it to. Also, a bit of a different camera angle here. I feel like this is like a whole new world. I just look so different. But thanks for hanging out. Again, we're going to get into some injury updates. I'll pull up the chat here. Now, I did also set this live stream up a little bit differently than usual. This is set up to a subscribers-only chat. We had some spam bots swoop in one of the last streams during the trade deadline. So trying to kind of maybe put an axe to that a little bit. So I think it'll be, if you subscribe, there'll be like a 5-minute wait, and then you can comment. But anybody who's a subscriber, you should be able to comment just fine. Let me know if you have any troubles with that. But again, I wanted to run through some of the injury updates because that's not something that often gets talked about on the channel here. So much of the time gets devoted to the system recaps that I love to do so much. And we do the results and everything. We'll also talk about some other topics, but thanks y'all for showing up. Ryan, hope you're having a nice evening. So let's get right into it. So kind of the biggest and most positive news in my mind, because it's so in front of us, is that Tyler Mahle is expected to start against the White Sox this weekend. I believe he's going to start on Saturday. They had to shut him down. They had to put him on the injured list. Interesting. And we'll learn some things too on this one. Interesting. Members will have a special emoji. If you do a : twins : it'll show up as kind of an old school Minnie and Paul logo. And I'm seeing that doesn't show up on this chat overlay, but it'll look cool on YouTube. But on the video overlay you're seeing here, it doesn't quite translate over. Anyway, Tyler Mahle is expected to start this weekend. I believe it's going to be Saturday against the White Sox. Just going to run through these. Again, Trevor Larnach, there's so many of them. Trevor Larnach, who had that core surgery, he's expected to be the DH for Fort Myers tonight and was not. I'm not sure if there was some kind of a setback. But that's, positive news that he is with the Mighty Muscles, kind of ramping up for a rehab assignment. Hopefully we'll see him tomorrow. Josh Winder we've seen on rehab assignment with the Saints. Bailey Ober started tonight. Speaking of the Mighty Muscles, you can see a quick highlight of his on my Twitter account, also TF Twins. But yeah, he struck out the side in the first inning, did Ober, and threw 3 innings for them, for the Mighty Muscles. So he should be coming back anytime. That'll be a nice lift for the rotation. Randy Dobnak is on rehab with the Saints. Kenta Maeda, a lot of these are positive news, but Kenta Maeda, we got bad news on. He is unlikely to return this season. He's ramping up. He's been throwing bullpens and everything, but the velo is just not coming back like the way you expected it would. It's just a great example of, even though there's some of these injuries are kind of common, some of these surgeries are kind of considered routine. But you can't know how guys are going to recover, how guys are going to come back. And unfortunately, Maeda has not progressed as much as they would like to have seen. And he, again, is unlikely to return this season. Really stinks. I'm sure it's nothing of his fault. I'm sure, Kenta Maeda, professional. I'm sure he worked hard. A guy who's also taking really good care of himself. I'm sure he was working really hard. I'm sure he's disappointed as well. But it's a bummer for the Twins. That's a bummer for Maeda too. Byron Buxton, he is still sore. There's kind of no update there. He's going to need more time. I thought Derek Falvey was kind of coy about his comments on him. Not a whole lot of information, but Buxton is a guy that clearly all the beat reporters are going to be asking about a lot. We'll know when he's about to come back. We're going to know beforehand. Jorge Polanco, he did work out before yesterday's game with the Twins and was kind of speculative. They thought he might start at second base, but that didn't happen. But so he did not play in that game. But a good sign that he was close. he hasn't been added to the injured list. Hopefully we'll see him tomorrow. I think that's a pretty realistic expectation. Cole Sands joined the Saints on a rehab assignment. I'm not sure if he's going to join the Twins active roster or just remain with the Saints once that's done, but good to see Cole Sands back. And then Ryan Jeffers has started baseball activities, but his return sounds pretty unlikely. I think I saw he was targeting the last home stand of the season. So, even if Jeffers comes back, it's going to be at the very end of the year. So that, again, a long list of updates for injuries to run through. And again, that's not a topic we cover too often on the channel. So I thought that would be valuable to check in on these guys. And I think it's very important to do that because, the Twins obviously fighting to get into the playoffs still. I see Luke mentioned that Cleveland lost to the Orioles today. I think it was 3-0. So the Twins picked up a half game on Cleveland. They're only a game back in the AL Central, very much in the thick of this thing, trying to get into the playoffs. And, the Twins haven't been playing great overall for the last few months now. I think they're 500 this month. And they've had a couple below 500 months along the way. But if you kind of consider, if they can get some of these guys back and have the roster could look pretty dramatically differently come October than it does even now, just a month from now. And of course, there's probably other guys who are healthy now that will get hurt in between now and then, just kind of the way it goes. And, some other teams will be getting guys back as well, getting into the playoffs. But, I think this Twins team could be looking a lot different, could be dangerous. Tyler Mahle is clearly just a very important piece in that puzzle, being probably the game one starter for the Twins. So that's going to be huge. A gigantic microscope will be under him for his start coming up this weekend. That's expected against the White Sox. And, the last time we saw him pitch, it was with greatly diminished velocity, kind of a scary situation. But luckily, he's progressing to get back on the mound. It's a good sign. And, fingers and toes crossed that goes well and his velocity comes back and he looks like you'd usually expect of Tyler Mahle. It sounds like he's been kind of through as a shoulder thing. It sounds like he's kind of been through that before, even earlier this year with Cincinnati. And it kind of, his velocity's kind of moved around a bit. So, maybe there's some optimism as to maybe he can bounce that back again. We shall see. All right. So, yeah, it's a huge – all the games are huge coming up here in the last month of the season. But, any of the head-to-head games are going to be absolutely massive coming up on next month. I see there's some discussion on the upcoming schedule. Ethan is asking if Ober comes back, do you think they'll roll with 6 starters again, or what will happen to Archer and Bundy? I think, and I think this has probably been, past that conclusion that Chris Archer should be either like a tandem starter or a follower. Basically, on the day that Chris Archer starts, you probably want to have another multi-inning starter type guy throw that day, at least in my opinion. Maybe I'm not sure what Rocco or the guys would be thinking, but my thought would be you go with the 5-man rotation, and I don't know if you want to bump. It comes down to whoever you think is going to handle which role better. If you want to bump Archer to the bullpen and start Ober, or keep Archer in the rotation and bump Ober to the bullpen, one way or another. There'll be there'll be a lot of options here coming up again because Josh Winder is coming back. Again, I'm not sure if Cole Sands. I expect he'll probably hang out in AAA, but he'll be back. Randy Dobnak's an option if he starts to pitch better. Good to see him healthy, but he hasn't been exactly pitching great. He's got a lot to earn. So there might be some kind of creative things, and with the rosters expanding to 28, it's only a couple more spots. It's only one more pitcher. Not a huge impact, but it might make it easier for you to carry kind of that long relief bullpen guy that might only throw every third game or so, or a little less. Glenn says he wouldn't trust Archer out of the pen. I mean, if he's starting, when you're asking him to go 4 or 5, I would imagine if you're only going to ask him to go 3 or 4, you could get more out of him. I'm not super. I'm dipping my toe into these stats. There's a lot of new pitching stats and new ways of evaluating pitchers based off of way deep stuff that's like available on Rapsodo and all that. It's over my head. I'll be completely honest, it's over my head. And I know Chris Archer's baseball savant sliders don't look good, but a lot of the stuff metrics, a lot of the stuff plus, a lot of these advanced pitching metrics really like Chris Archer a lot. And that makes me think like, this guy might be interesting. If instead of you're asking him to even go 4 or 5, you ask him to only go 2 or 3 innings and, kind of gas it out there and leave a little bit more out there than usual. It could be interesting, but we're also running out of time on these experiments. That's the other thing. With all these guys coming back, it's kind of interesting. You have these kind of ideas you can float out there and different ways of thinking about using guys. And of course, in the postseason, pitcher roles almost like go out the window. Managers do crazy stuff in the postseason, but you'd like to get these guys some experience in the role before just throwing them into the fire. And I think Archer will definitely, if anything, be in the bullpen come the postseason if the Twins can make it. But I think that's an interesting idea for him. I think he's a little bit more intriguing than a lot of people give him credit for. As a starting pitcher, he doesn't do much for me either, to be honest. But we had and feel free to discuss amongst yourselves. That's part of these live streams is, we can hang out and we can kind of throw some ideas around, discuss some things. But also kind of you can discuss things yourselves too. If you guys want to hang out and get some side conversations going too. Jaywick 13 throws out there, who would have thought Bundy and Archer would still be on this team and pitching semi-effectively. Archer's thrown way more innings than I would have expected. Just he stayed healthy. Not that he's like some kind of innings horse. It's just that he stayed healthy. I'm shocked as many innings as he's provided. And Bundy has pitched, even though he hasn't pitched real great, he's pitched much. I was expecting more of like how he pitched last year, and especially after how poorly Shoemaker and Happ went. It was just so easy to look at Bundy and be like, well, there's just another guy that's going to do that. Just be horrible. I would have liked for the team to aim higher, and try to acquire some better pitchers. But I am impressed with what Bundy and Archer have provided. That's probably more of a commentary on my low expectations for them than anything. But yeah. Anyway, Tyler threw out kind of a comment before we got into when I threw this out that we were going to do a live stream. He mentioned the Caleb Thielbar and the second half bullpen, just that was sort of something that he had on his mind, and that was a big takeaway from him of late. And yeah, absolutely. Anybody who's watching the Twins on a regular basis right now knows Caleb Thielbar has just been a beast. So I figured we kind of take a look at his numbers for just a quick minute, because it's the good stuff. It is the good stuff. People have been gushing about Duran, rightly so, I should say. But Thielbar of late has been like about as good as Duran has been performance-wise. I think I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. We're here on Baseball Reference, by the way. I wanted to really highlight it over the last 28 days. Over the last 4 weeks, Caleb Thielbar has pitched to a 0.82, a 0.909 whip, and has 13 strikeouts and 2 walks in 11 innings. He's just been a monster over that stretch. And as you see, opponent hit 205 with a 238 on base percentage and a 231 slugging. We're talking about small samples, even a month basically of a reliever. Again, that's only 12 games we're looking at. Very small sample. Things can change quick for the bullpen. But that's also a reason to sort of believe in him right now. If the magic runs out, you got to react quickly, I think. That's kind of the key with the bullpens. But yeah, Caleb Thielbar, absolutely a guy who deserves to be recognized for his performance so far this year. And I had one more. So he also brought up Jovani Moran. One moment here. I'm going to pull up his information because he's had a really weird and uneven year. And he's a rookie, 25 years old, and this is kind of a reflection of his minor league career as well. He's just been very up and down. When it's good, it's pretty good. It's looking good, and he's got that changeup that's really a neutralizing pitch. It's really an X factor for him. But when it's bad, he cannot find the strike zone. He very rarely gives up a lot of hard contact. Even when it's bad, it's just he cannot throw strikes and creates a lot of trouble for himself. So what we have here, again, we're at Baseball Reference. This is Jovani Moran's numbers. Now, I think especially with the expanded roster, he's where he should be. He's in the active roster with the Twins now. I like that. But, if you're curious, you've only seen him with the Twins, wondering, like, why hasn't this guy been around the whole year? He's got a 2.05 ERA. That's tremendous. A 1.17 whip, picking out 12.3 batters per nine. That's 36 cuts in 26 and a third innings. Like, this should be a guy who's being maybe pushed a higher leverage role, let alone, being in the major leagues. But you see there with St. Paul, how strange is that? Almost an identical sample, 26 and a third innings versus 24 innings. He's got a 2.05 ERA with the Twins and a 6 ERA with the Saints. So if you've been kind of confused at, why this guy was down on the farm in the first place, that's why. A 1.625 whip for the Saints. It's still getting strikeouts, but walking a lot of guys and just kind of not being able to finish off his innings as well as he has with the Twins. 14 walks in 24 innings. He's only given up 2 home runs, across both the major and minor leagues. So it's not like an Emilio Pagan situation where when he's bad, he's getting crushed and he's giving up home runs left and right. And, maybe to a certain extent, if Moran tried to avoid his walks more, we would see him get his teeth kicked in a little bit. So maybe there's kind of some causation, correlation or whatever going on there. And he kind of knows when to challenge a batter, not to. But the guy's got to throw more strikes. Very encouraged at how he's pitched with the Twins. I view him as a long-term piece in this bullpen. So that was another guy that Tyler had brought up as an encouraging guy in this Twins bullpen. So far in the second half was, I think, his main point. All right. So we did the injuries. We talked about the bullpen. I think I had one more thing here. But again, in case you're coming a little bit late, I was explaining I had some new things going on here. Nothing exciting, kind of boring. I had some electricians add in some new outlets in here and had to kind of change some stuff around. Lots of changes going on in the TF Twins household here, though. I have a kid going to school for the first time here in a few days. Lots going on. Very exciting. But the other thing I wanted to look at, so again, kind of trying to get my feet under me with the live streams again, get a look at this new setup and see how I like it. I think we're looking good. And chat about a few things we just haven't got to on the channel with the system recaps taking up a lot of the effort that goes into this here. I should say, even though the Twins are off, I should say there still will be a system recap tonight with the minor leagues. I apologize to everybody. I didn't get to this is a special week. This is a special week. I've kind of dropped the ball so far. The Mighty Muscles are playing in Bradenton, which means that this is the only Florida State League affiliate that has a broadcast available on MILB.TV. I've kind of blown it so far. I'll try to make it up somehow and grab some of the video from there. But it's just kind of been a little crazy, a little busier than usual. The Twins have been a little bit more fun to talk about as well. That's helped this week, certainly. You know, when they were on that big losing streak, it's kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about was the big club. So, but I'm going to try to swing back and either grab some video and do an extra video on some of that. And then if I can't do that, if I can't make a good video, I'll throw some really raw footage out there, at least for members out there. So if you're interested in being a member, $1.99 a month, help support the channel, gets you some bonus content. All right. Anyway, but there'll be Fort Myers highlights in tonight's video, including a little bit of Bailey Ober. All right, so the next thing, you know, this is going to be no surprise to anybody that really pays very close attention to the Twins. But this is just a great resource and a great visualization of the season that I just kind of wanted to bring up and discuss. And yeah, I get why, you know, especially when the Twins were in this dive, the big kind of discussion point was how disappointed. And really, there's been kind of a disappointed vibe about the Twins for months now. Because like I said earlier, they're only 500 this month. They've had a couple months where they're below 500. They had that great May. So it kind of feels like they've been underperforming. And that really came in when they had the very rough losing streak that was just mid-month this month. And you can see just the plummet of their playoff odds on Fangraphs. You know, some of these from some sources will be a different. I don't have big feelings on anyone in particular, but I love the way that they present this. So that's why, if you're wondering why I went here. On August 19th, the Twins had a 54.2% chance of the playoffs. That dropped all the way to 19.3 on August 25th. So only 6 days, it goes from 54.2 to 19.3. But then, of course, the Twins rattle off this 5-game winning streak, goes all the way back up to 46.3. And then they lost yesterday, so it dipped a little bit. Cleveland lost today. I think it bounced back up again. Yep. But at this point, you know, Cleveland is at 55.8%. Minnesota is at 43.4%. Again, there's only a game that separates the two teams, but I believe that the Twins have – I know they have a more difficult schedule than the average team. I'm not sure if they have – at one point, they had one of the most difficult second halves. I'm not sure if that's still the case or not. And I think Chicago in particular had a very light second half schedule, and Cleveland did as well. So if you're wondering why the difference, you know, 55.8 versus 43.4, despite only a 1-game deficit at this point, if you're wondering why that's still such a big diz, because the strength of schedule and kind of how they project things going out from here. But you know, it felt that. It felt every bit as much of this graph, that big V, you know, just riding this out with this team. And, you know, even the longest time, hardest core baseball fan who has the grasp on, you know, it's a long season, you can't overreact to little things, teams go on. You can logically know that and feel that. But there are certain times where it just feels like your team's never going to win again. And that really, this stretch really like that. So it's just hilarious for the Twins to bounce back with that 5 wins in a row and kind of get back, not quite to where they were, but pretty close again. And for that to come in late August, you know, such a long season. It's kind of remarkable any of these races come down to the final month. Some of them don't. You know, some of these divisions that have a super team and then the division's not very good, there's kind of teams running away with those. But, you know, it's kind of remarkable. So I just kind of wanted to pull that up and just say, like, wow, look at us. Who would have thought? But, of course, there's work to be done. You know, you can talk about expectations and you can talk about performance. I think it's a really easy, and especially, you know, for me, you know, and I think especially since the way I consume Twins content and creating Twins content, It's hard to be down in the gutter for very long. You almost try to find ways to keep some positivity going. But I think, it's so easy to sort of shrug off if they don't make the playoffs. It would be so easy to shrug off and be like, me personally, I only thought they were going to win 78 games anyway. I thought they were going to be sellers at the deadline. And kind of like deflect any kind of frustration by kind of pointing back to those preseason expectations when, it's been 5 months of baseball, just over 100, the season is ridiculous. The season is ridiculous. So I think you do have to allow yourself to adjust to some things. And, even though it's going to be tough, this is a team that is, flawed. This is a team that is very injured. This is a team facing some adversity. I still would be disappointed if they don't pull it off. I'm going to put that out there. I still would be disappointed if they don't make it. I think with Chicago just completely nosediving, that created such an opportunity. And, I was pleased with the way the trade deadline went. I was happy to see the Twins were more aggressive, certainly, than they usually were. They were among the more aggressive teams. They were among the teams that added the most at the trade deadline. So I'm happy with that. But it would be absolutely disappointing to see them not finish this thing off. And, what happens from there, I'm not going to be thinking about at all. I know I mentioned Mahle maybe would be the game one starter, but I haven't thought about much of that at all. You got to get there first. And I got to say, I'm not really necessarily expecting that, but hopeful, very hopeful. All right. That was that. Let me get that out of here. All right, Ryan, thanks for throwing that out there. Ryan says, I love your lives. I wish I could do more of these. It's kind of difficult because it doesn't seem to make sense to go live when the Twins are playing. Maybe that's a dumb take of me. And then, just doing all these system recaps eats up a lot of time. But I would like to do more of these, and I've been trying to find ways. But, any kind of evenings that the Twins don't play, I'll try to get on live. Again, this one was sort of, got to keep sharp. Got to keep sharp on these and remember how all these buttons work and how getting everything set up goes. And keeping track of all this stuff. So didn't have a whole lot to talk about tonight, but, we covered the injuries. Again, if you missed that, you can watch this. This will be available on the replay. Ran through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 injuries, 10 injury updates. Oh my goodness. All right. But Luke is asking if I think they will extend Correa. I think that's becoming more of a possibility. I think certainly with the way he's played, and again, his overall numbers are pretty solid. Not nearly as good as last year. So I think his market will not be as good as it was. It will not be I'll put it this way. His market will not be as good as they anticipated it would be at the time he signed this current contract. I'll put it that way. Now, what would I do? I would see if Correa opts in. I think that would be the ideal situation for the Twins. I don't know that I would be antsy to get into like a big long-term deal with him. And that doesn't seem to really be this front office's motivation with really anybody, unless they can get a good price on a guy. And you can see logic from Correa's standpoint. Like, I got $35 million sitting here. I can just take for 2023. I don't got to go back. I'm sure he did not like his experience as a free agent. I'm sure it was he fired his agent over it. I'm sure it was very frustrating. I'm sure it was it's hard to paint this as a guy who walks away with $100 million contract in hand. I'm sure it was a little bit painful. The Astros really didn't make an effort to re-sign him. I'm sure that wasn't fun. The lockout threw lots of crazy stuff in there, but yeah, I can see some logic on Carlos also just saying I like it here. This team's pretty good. It certainly could be worse, could be better, could be worse. I got $35 million I can just take here and just not have to think about that crap again. Not have to go through that, not have to do all the uncertainty. And then, after, I don't think he would opt in for the final year. I think then he would. And I think he's still very young. So he could still make, obviously, every year that goes on, he's kind of maybe walking away from some bigger money. But if you look at his career numbers, and this is something I think we discussed before, but I'll pull it up. Once again, Correa has been very kind of inconsistent over his career from year to year. So just because he's having a down year from last year certainly doesn't mean he's in decline. He's still only 27. He'll be 28 later this month. So still a very young guy in terms of a free agent in particular. But here we have it on Fangraphs. Let's take a look at, I don't know. You want to look at just his offense or his WAR, it doesn't matter either way. You can see kind of, he's a rookie, and then he has this 5-win season in 2017, and it's all the way back down to 3.4 in 2018, to where he's only a 101 WRC plus. That's where league average is 100. So barely an above average hitter. Comes back and is great again. And then in 2020, the COVID season was terrible. But then, of course, great postseason, which Twins fans know a little bit about that one, unfortunately. And then bounces back again to have really his best overall season of his career last year. And, offensively, comparatively speaking, when you adjust, again, I kind of made that a topic in another video, but his OPS is way down, but actually his WRC plus or his OPS plus is pretty comparable to what it was last year. I don't know. I don't know what to make of the defensive metrics. Those are always kind of tricky for me, but they don't like them nearly as much as they did last year. I don't see any reason to think a guy who's 28 should be really in that much of a decline defensively. It's very interesting. And I am willing to kind of dig into that a little bit more, as you can tell, than I was earlier this year. I was like, why are we even going to worry about that? There's 100 games left. Let's have fun with these games and see how this all develops before we start trying to figure that out. Now that we're in the kind of final month of the season, obviously there's still lots of other fun things going on with the Twins. Very happy that they are playing meaningful baseball still. But I think this does get to be a little bit more of a topic we can dig into and consider what's going to happen a little bit more. I don't see the Twins extending him, would be my guess. Basically, to directly answer that question, I do think it's possible he might opt in. I think if he opts out, the Twins might have, conversations with him like they would, any other free agent. But I would bet some other team would just be maybe more desperate for him. And, he's still great. It doesn't make any sense that he's been as bad with runners in scoring position as he has. It really doesn't, because this guy's been really one of the better, clutch hitters of his current generation. His postseason numbers are outstanding, better than his career numbers. So it doesn't make any sense that he wouldn't, be able to hit in the clutch or perform with runners in scoring position for the Twins. It's just been infuriating. It's honestly, it's like the most Minnesota sports thing ever. Carlos Correa this year, it really feels like that, because, it's not that Minnesota sports teams are so hopeless and just the biggest losers of all of their leagues. It's that they tease you. They pull out your hope, and then they cut it off right when you least want to see it. And that's kind of been Correa. He's been good. Really, overall. He's been good. You've pretty much anything you want to evaluate him on, he's been good. But he has been god-awful late and close and high leverage, runners in scoring position, not just like not as good, not just like bad, just god awful. So yeah, we get the one of the best postseason performers, one of the best clutch hitters currently in baseball coming into this year, and just he's mostly himself, other than the fact that has completely disappeared. That is so Minnesota sports. Yeah, that's my thoughts on Correa. I would be happy that if he was back again. I'd love that. Part of the reason why I don't know that the Twins just generally, this front office doesn't really do long-term deals. But I also think, you don't want to put too much of your eggs into the Royce Lewis basket, just given his inexperience, given the fact that he's coming back from a second major knee injury. That's all concern. It's easy to forget how little of a sample we got out of him before he got hurt. Maybe that was a mirage. But I do think there's reason to kind of leave the door open long-term at shortstop, not necessarily next year, but long-term at shortstop for him to potentially take that position over. So I think that's a factor too. Marty says Carlos's arm pays for itself. Yeah, he's special. He's special in the field with his arm, especially. I love watching him play defense. Zachary's asked, should Miranda have serious Rookie of the Year votes? Yeah, I think Julio Rodriguez is too far in front. Adley Rutschman kind of got a late start, but he's building a very impressive resume. I don't think Miranda is going to get much serious Rookie of the Year, like first place vote consideration, but obviously he'll get some votes. It's been a great year for him. I think he's gotten better I don't know if the numbers, obviously he got off to a horrible start and then was really good and has sustained that to some degree. I don't think his numbers have gotten literally better each month, but I think we're seeing him getting better. There are some things rounding out at first base for him, although it's still kind of a little bit of an adventure. But he didn't really play a lot of first base in the minor leagues. Some guys are a little bit more natural at positions they're unfamiliar with than others. I think there's no reason to believe that he can't become a good defensive first baseman, but I also think he can play third. Anyway, he continues to look more and more comfortable. I don't think that he's going to get a lot of serious Rookie of the Year love, but clearly he has established himself as an important kind of core guy now. We're kind of watching this. That's been kind of an interesting side story of this season is we're in some ways kind of watching one core fade away with, Sano being out pretty much all year. Barrios had been traded last year, but he was still kind of part of that core. You have Max Kepler kind of completely fading into the background. Jorge Polanco is part of that core. Certainly I think there's somebody else I'm forgetting. But we're seeing, the Mirandas, Duran, Joe Ryan. We're seeing a lot of guys kind of establish themselves. Rice has been doing this for a few years now, kind of as a new core. Again, hopefully Royce Lewis can be part of that. So it's been kind of a fun thing to watch develop this year in a winning season where teams playing, a bad division, but teams playing meaningful games in September. After last year, I'm having a blast. Zachary, I think there is a chance that Kenta could pitch this year, but what did I put down? Unlikely. So they didn't say just flat out he's not coming back, but they painted it as he is unlikely to return this season. So buzzkill. They have him for next year. So, hopefully we see some of Kenta Maeda again, the good Kenta Maeda that we remember back again, but it is what it is, and like I said, when we talked about him earlier, it's so unfortunate that, even some of these routine procedures, some of the timetables that are, every guy's different. I think every recovery is different. And, it's kind of taken for granted that you think a certain injury is going to be 12 months, might not work out. Unfortunately, it's just the way it goes. Ryan, thanks for the super chat. I appreciate that. All right. You have to let me know if you have any questions or anything, topic you want to hit on, Ryan. Other than that, I think we're probably going to wrap it up. Again, I'm going to bounce out of here and get a system recap put together. No Twins today, but all the minor league teams are going. Again, there is a Fort Myers broadcast available, so we'll have some Mighty Muscles highlights. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. We'll talk again soon in that system recap. Thank you so much for your support. August was a really good month for the channel. Once again, really just picking up steam. Every month is a good month. Every month is growth. Hit 5,000 subscribers last month. That was insane. Thank you all so much for your support, for hanging out, for chatting here. And we will talk again soon. Hopefully do more of these live streams too. I like these.